Haribol, Namaste. My name is Janapati Das, and welcome again to Krishna Book Reading Story Time. Let's get right into our hearing and chanting, and then into our story. Thank you so much for joining. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and like and comment on the videos. Feel free to share with your friends. There are a lot of really wonderful stories that we've gotten into and discussed already, probably about maybe 50 videos. So if you are your first time joining, feel free to go back to the first video and just watch through. Please accept my respects. Let's do some chanting. Namaho Vishnu Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Sita Svarupam Paramam Sita Namine Namaho Vishnu Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Sita Svarupam right, well, thank you again for joining in tonight. Please accept my respects. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master and unto my spiritual grandfather, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are going to continue with our story now. As you recall from our last story, we had been talking about Narada Muni, the great transcendental spaceman, they call him, because he can travel. He has mystic powers that makes it so he can travel within the three worlds, the spiritual world. He can travel in also the heavenly planets and the earthly planets and the hellish planets. And he always travels with his Veena, chanting the names of Krishna. But he also appears to serve Krishna in different means by coming into situations. There's so many wonderful stories about Narada Muni and how he comes and he saves the most fallen, or he puts people into situations like the two demigods where he cursed them to become Arjuna trees, but actually their curse had ended up becoming a benediction, which those two living entities were able to see Krishna face to face and receive the benediction and mercy of Krishna. So Narada Muni, of course, is always doing this to spread the glories of Krishna and to, in this case, expedite the pastimes of Krishna. So he went to King Kamsa and basically spilled the beans about Krishna's hiding out. And this, of course, brought us to the situation where King Kamsa set up his plan to try to put all this more snares of trying to get Krishna and Balaram to be killed, and so he could continue to rule. And this is how demons act. We've talked about this, the demoniac, oftentimes in forms of demoniac rulers, whether they're Saddam Hussein's or Osama bin Laden's or Stalin's or Hitler's or anyone really that are Putin's and, this person or that person, Genghis Khan, whoever it might be in the past or in the future or even present, their ideas of glory and power and their plans to try to remain in power are always thwarted either by Krishna, by people, by situations, or by the time factor. So King Kamsa sent one of his people in his administration, Akrura, who was a great devotee of Lord Krishna and also the uncle of Krishna. He deputed him to go and bring Krishna and Balaram to Mathura to a wrestling match where Kamsa had a evil plan he wanted to hatch, but of course it was all part of Krishna's pastimes. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Akrura took off here and left for Vrindavan. Akrura knew beyond doubt that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Vishnu. Lord Vishnu glances over the material energy, and thus the cosmic manifestation comes into being. This is actually a very baffling point for atheists and scientists. They have these theories of a Big Bang or speculations about things, but they really don't know about what happened before this Big Bang, what's going to happen after the universe. They have theories and whatnot, but here it's laid out in the Vedas that Lord Krishna, Lord Vishnu, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from which all things, all planets, all people, everything comes from, all energies. And all Krishna has to do with the material energy is to glance over it, because it is said that any of Krishna's abilities and senses can do any of the other senses. So if he glances over the material energies, he can send forth the living entities that are not interested in serving him into the material world. He impregnates the material world, in other words, with his glance. So we can't like do these kind of interactive things with our senses. We can't eat with our eyes. We can't smell with our mouth. But these are things that Krishna, being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, can do in any way, in any shape or form. So he glances over the material energy, and thus the cosmic manifestation comes into being. And this is a very deep and complicated science about, how the material energy is formed. But if you actually lay it side by the way that kind of scientists sort of understand it, there's really no discrepancy in the way that's happened. The only difference is that scientists just say that it just happened. It just came about of its own, like as if, the argument is that if you had all the parts of a 747 in a box and you threw them up in the air, that they believe that somehow or another, through enough chances, that this plane would come together. But this is actually impossible. There's not even scientists themselves say that the complexity and extreme organization of this material world could not have possibly come about by chance. They don't really know what it is, but the chances of that actually happening is nil. So even the microbe, the complexity is even greater than any of the computers that we've created. It's so complicated. And so the cosmic manifestation is created through the via of the agent of Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma learns how to create the universe from the Supreme Lord, but this is all done indirectly by Krishna's energies. Although Lord Vishnu is the creator of this material world, he is free by his own energy from the influence of material energy. And of course, atheists and scientists can't really explain that because their limited ability of their brain power, or their mind, or their capacity to understand, because we're in temporary bodies that are full of fallacies. It's sort of like trying to take an eyedropper and saying, I'm going to understand the absolute truth by taking up the whole ocean. But you take this, you have a little bit of understanding, maybe a small, very minuscule understanding from your mind, and you'd say, this is my format by which I value what's true and what's not true. So as we've said before, it's kind of ridiculous when scientists start saying, well, prove that Krishna exists, or prove that any of these things, and we show them the proof out in the Vedas, self-evident from their proof themselves, and they say, prove it, no, using my system, but my system is fallible. It's like the broken system to try to explain something that is perfect. It's kind of silly. The reality is, most of these atheists and scientists, it's not that they can't understand by their own volition, because they really are envious of Krishna and they want to be the supreme controller. So, as it's said in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is the source of all remembrance and forgetfulness. When a living entity wishes to know of why it's suffering in this material world, what is the purpose of life, what is the meaning, and sincerely asks from within their heart, then God will give them the opportunity to be able to come to know the truth. That is the reality of the situation. Similarly, Krishna, the original Vishnu, by expansion of his internal potency, created the inhabitants of Vrindavan. In the Brahma Samhita, it is also confirmed that the paraphernalia and abode of Krishna are expansions of his internal potency. And his internal potency, of course, is represented in the form of Radharani, the loving service of Krishna. So it's by Krishna's internal potency that these things are created. Our love for Krishna is Krishna's internal potency. Sometimes it's said that Krishna's internal potency is higher than Krishna, because the love for Krishna, is so sweet, it's actually even more attractive than Krishna. Krishna himself eventually wants to taste it and comes as Lord Chaitanya in the mood of his internal potency, or Radharani, and tastes love for God. Similarly, Krishna, the original Vishnu, by expansion of his internal potencies, created the inhabitants of Vrindavan in the Brahma Samhita. It is also confirmed that the paraphernalia and abode are expansions of his internal potency. The same internal potency is exhibited on earth as Vrindavan, where Krishna enjoys himself with his parents in the company of his friends, the cowherd boys and gopis. By the statement of Akrura, it is clear that since Krishna is transcendental to the modes of material nature, the inhabitants of Vrindavan who are engaged in loving service for the Lord are also transcendental. So the modes of material nature, as once again, if we're talking about, are goodness, sattva, passion, rajas, and ignorance, or tamas. And those are the three modes of material nature, energies within the material world that influence our existence, have influence on everything in the material world, but specifically on living entities. And that's a whole nother subject too. Akrura also considered the necessity of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. He thought that the transcendental activities, instructions, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna are all for the good fortune of people in general. This is a truth, as Bhaktivedanta lays this out. Krishna consciousness is the remedy for the suffering of misery and the burning fire of material existence within this material world. So many things are tried in this material world, to whether they're in the forms of laws or trying to change people's consciousness or change the way people think or act towards each other. They're only like temporary bananas, we'll say, band-aids that don't really get to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is our misidentification of who we really are, of ignorance of who we are in this material world, of acting on a materialistic platform, self-centered, envious of God, and wanting to be the center of attention. This is the source of misery. This is our attempted pursuit of happiness in the material plane only brings about misery. And the remedy, the cooling factor, is the pastimes of Krishna, the Krishna consciousness, the hearing, chanting of Krishna's names. They're all Krishna. They're all remembrance of Krishna, remembering who we are, and remembering our loving relationship with Krishna. What a world this would be in if people were in this consciousness. Obviously, it's a material world. Things are temporary. People pass on. Happiness is not really to be found in this material world, but our suffering and the great suffering that goes on in this material world would be mitigated considerably if people understood who they were and acted on this platform. There would be real brotherhood and sisterhood amongst people. The people can remain constantly in Krishna consciousness by discussing the Lord's transcendental form, qualities, pastimes, and paraphernalia. By doing so, the whole universe can actually live auspiciously and advance peacefully. So a so-called material advancement is not really, it's brought us much more comfort, as Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada has called it, made humans into more like polished animals. We're very clean and well-to-do, and our bodies are taken care of in the West, and but we are still acting like animals hedonistically. We're not, we've advanced technologically in certain aspects of our life, but we haven't really advanced peacefully. We haven't forwarded our society in peace in any way. But without Krishna consciousness, civilization is but a decoration for a dead body. A dead body may be decorated very nicely, but without consciousness, such decorations are useless. Human society without Krishna consciousness is useless and lifeless, which is true, which is why we have increasing amount of wealth, technological advances, more sense enjoyment than we did from 50 years ago. But we have an increasing rate of misery. Suicide rates for younger people are through the roof. Suicide rates in general, drug use, violence is increased. And, if society would benefit from all these things, why is it that we have all these things? The reason is because we have, as I've used that analogy before, we've learned to paint our birdcage very nicely and fixed it up with new technological gadgets and whatnot, but inside the bird is dying. We're not attending to the bird inside. You could say that actually in past societies in America, our technological advances were not so great as they are now. Our advances in many things were not as great, but we spent more time in spiritual pursuit. Religion was much more of a factor. Spiritual life was much more a reality. They would say that, how you would determine what was the most important thing in society is what is the tallest building in the community. And that used to be the church, actually. It used to be the church, and in some places in the world, the mosque or the temple. But with business, money became the more important pursuit. Let's get more money, let's get more sense enjoyment. So you see an increase of tall corporation buildings, and with that comes, the liquor stores and the places to go, the dance halls, and where we can find, once we have more money, we can go and try to enjoy our senses more. But we find the great increase of misery in the material world. Akruras thought that Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna has now appeared as one of the descendants of the Yadu dynasty. The principles of religion are his enacted laws. Those who are abiding by such laws are the demigods, and those who are not abiding are demons. He has advented himself, advented meaning come to, advented himself to give protection to the demigods who are very obedient to the laws of the Supreme Lord. The demigods and the devotees of the Lord take pleasure in abiding by the laws of Krishna, and Krishna takes pleasure in giving them all sorts of protection. And that idea, the law of God, the law of Krishna, which was in the past, even what I'm talking about, the law of God, was more, society would follow those laws, and because they would be following those laws, they were in a protected. But when society decides that we're not going to follow God's laws, we're going to follow individual laws, or whatever's our whims of pleasure, and then we hire the politicians to support what we want, and basically it's all politicians are lower, as they said, lower than Shudras. They're not spiritually advanced. They're not guiding society according to, and everybody is losing out in this. So the laws of God, the laws of which are set out to protect society, protect the living entity, and help them elevate themselves spiritually to go back to God, are not doing that anymore. Instead, we're just perpetuating the cycle of birth and death with society, and just living in more and more misery as Kali Yuga progresses. These activities of Krishna, his protection of the devotees and killing the demons, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, are always good for men to hear and narrate. The glorious activities of the Lord will ever increasingly be chanted by the devotees and demigods. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this is Akruras speaking, is the spiritual master of all spiritual masters. He is the deliverer of all fallen souls, and he is the proprietor of 3 worlds. Anyone is able to see him by eyes smeared with love of Godhead. Today I shall be able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who by his transcendental beauty has attracted the goddess of fortune to live with him perpetually. As soon as I arrive in Vrindavan, I will get down from this chariot and fall prostrate to offer my obeisances to the Supreme Lord, the master of material nature and all living entities. The lotus feet of Krishna are always worshipped by great mystic yogis, so I shall also worship his lotus feet and become one of his friends in Vrindavan like the cowherd boys. When I bow down before Lord Krishna in that way, Certainly he will place his fearless lotus hand on my head. His hand is offered to all conditioned souls who take shelter under his lotus feet. Krishna is the ultimate goal of life for all people who fear material existence. And certainly when I see him, he will give me the shelter of his lotus feet. I am aspiring for the touch of his lotus-like hands on my head. And so this is a really important point, because somebody asked me, because I had brought up a point about atheists being afraid of death, and she had said that, her grandmother was fearful of, but even though she went to church and was a Christian, that it is likely also because people sometimes in religion have a very materialistic point of view. In other words, they think the body is resurrecting. They're very focused still on material existence. But what is said here by Bhaktivedanta Swami as Prabhupada is that God is the ultimate goal of life for people who are afraid of material existence. So one has to come to understand that you are not your body. You're not this mortal coil, as they refer to it. You're not your mind. These things are temporary, but you are eternal. And I think that deep down, people understand that, but there is a confusion as to what is perpetuated in so much in our life through religion, through whatever, through society, that we are the body, we are the, even movies that talk about afterlife, it's the person who's the actor or something. You see him in his body in the next life. It doesn't really get to the point that this body is not who we are. We've had so many types of bodies, so many boyfriends and so many girlfriends and so many wives and children and husbands, and we've been in different animal species, and none of these are really who we are. We're a spiritual entity, eternally existing and eternally the servant of Krishna. And I think I'm going to probably have to go, because I have to do another live stream pretty shortly here. It's a really great story of Akruras going to Vrindavan, and we'll get more into it a little bit. We'll just chant a couple of minutes, and thank you very much. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. not able to get more into the kirtan after that. I have to go for something else right now. But thank you very much for joining in. Namaste.